Hello everyone, welcome to PHTV Channel 4 in Palos Heights. I'm Sue Jankowski and this is Spotlight. Today we're going to spotlight our Palos Heights Public Library, which I'm really excited about. You know how Channel 4 feels about the library. We love it, and I think you do too. And we're really highlighting a couple of things that have come to pass in the past couple of years. First of all, we'd like to talk about the pandemic a little bit, find out how the library had to adapt to that and what kinds of things they did to maintain the facility the way we're all used to. And also, there's a big renovation project going on. I don't know if everybody is aware of it, but it's going to be absolutely stunning. And so to tell us about that today, we have our library director, Jesse Blazek. Jesse, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me.
You know, when I say, we love the library, and I mean that. I mean, I think everybody in town feels like our library is just like, it's like a hub kind of place for everybody. So when the pandemic struck, and we were all home, and we all spend time at the library, we kind of like lost contact with people and places we normally went to, and that was hard. Yeah. But the library came through with flying colors, and I know that was challenging for the library and schools and so forth to be able to do that. I think it would be interesting for our viewers to know, how did that impact the library? Like, what happened during those initial days? Maybe kind of take us through and tell us about the adaptations you had to make during that time.
Yeah, what a crazy time that was.
Oh my gosh, yes.
From the sudden shutdown in March of 2020, and then April, figuring out what this new world was that we were living in, and everything since then. I remember, long days at home, trying to juggle watching my kids and figuring out how to resume library services, or what those were going to look like. People think of what we do at the library as kind of introverted work, maybe, that we spend a lot of time with books and movies and inanimate objects, but it is a people profession, and that's what I tell people who are interested in becoming librarians. We work with people, we work with the public, we're here to serve the public. So when you kind of take, like you said, when you take that out of the equation, take the people aspect out of it, we have to reevaluate everything that we do. Yes. And that's really what it was. It was a process of looking very closely at every little thing that we normally do and saying, okay, how can we do this in these crazy circumstances where, and again, at the beginning of the pandemic, there were so many things that we didn't know that we now know, a lot more about, at least. We didn't know, for example, could you catch this by touching a book that came from an infected person's house? Exactly,
we were all washing our boxes and paper bags.
Well,
we didn't know.
We were quarantining everything that came back for a week. It might have been 10 days at the beginning that we were quarantining items. We had, all these quarantine stations set up where we were just letting items sit when they came back from people's homes, because we didn't know. Now we know. There's been a lot more research on those kinds of things that shows that, the risk of contracting something from an item that somebody's sneezed on or something, is really small. That, and we've gotten used to the idea of good hand hygiene, wearing masks, things that help protect us regardless of what we're touching. So it was quite a process at the beginning of figuring out, how can we continue doing what we're doing, and what is it that we do, what can we do that would fit with the current circumstances. And one of those things was really trying to enhance our virtual services, which we've had for a long time, with regard to media on demand, books that you can read online on your devices. We added magazines to that mix. There are some movies, different virtual services, along with making staff accessible. Again, trying to sort of bridge that people gap, so that staff can be available to answer reference questions. That's, again, such a huge part of what we do. So, we added a chat function to our website almost instantly. We had people working from home even though the building was closed, answering emails, answering chats, just trying to be as available as we could. And then the last piece of the puzzle, the thing that probably really got us going again was, again, we've been offering curbside service for a while. Not many people took us up on it before the pandemic. I always thought it was a nice thing to offer, especially in the winter. You don't have to get out of your car. We'll bring the stuff out to you. But I think people are just so polite; they don't want to
bother you.
Yeah, exactly. I tell them, please, we're getting paid to do this. Let us bring the items out to you rather than you, walking on a slushy sidewalk or whatever.
Or having your 3 children,
Yeah,
getting them out of the car and all of
exactly.
that. Yeah.
So we really pivoted hard toward curbside service too, especially back in the beginning. Again, when buildings were still closed, we were still really figuring out how to operate in person safely. So that was a blessing. So between our virtual services and the curbside, that kept us in touch to some extent with people. And then once the building reopened again, we had our plexiglass shields. We again, in terms of movement throughout the building, we had things a little more kind of cordoned off, and staff were a little more hands-on, just trying to sort of minimize the amount of time people were spending in the building at that point. Again, in the beginning, not knowing that much about the transmissibility of the virus. One of the blessings of this is, that we now know how to operate in these circumstances pretty well. We've been doing it for a while. My staff are pretty comfortable, talking with people, dealing with the potential of a virus going around, and still having those face-to-face conversations, having people be able to come in and spend time in the library, and more recently resuming our in-person gatherings.
Would you say that you're talking about the virtual things that people could do? So not everybody knew what to do. So was that like a kind of a learning curve, not only for the staff, because now they have to explain how do you use these virtual things, but were people at home like more willing to, hey, I want to be involved in the library, I want to hear the programming, I want to see the book or magazine or whatever. Did they call and question or use the chat services?
Yeah, and that was one of the reasons I felt so strongly that we needed to be in touch. And again, getting back to the librarian as a people profession, having these tools available is one thing, but being able to help people understand how to use them is another. So we did immediately see an uptick in our virtual services, but we also did have a high demand of people saying, "Hey, how do I use these tools? What do I do?" And as you know, there are a million devices out there that you can use these on, and everyone is a little bit different. So it can be a lengthy conversation that you need to have with somebody to say, "Okay, I have this this version of iPhone that's running this this operating system. How do I download this app and get it to work with my library account?"
It's just such a tremendous challenge, because you're right. Every device is different. Every person you're talking to is different. Every want they have is different, whether it's a movie or music or whatever. That had to be like, did people kind of get that expertise, like I'm good at this and you're good at that? If I get this call, maybe you could handle it?
To some extent, yes, but again, this is the kind of thing that we've been doing for a long time. People have always needed help with their devices and wanted to connect with virtual services. So a lot of the time, these are conversations that staff are used to having. The issue was more making sure staff are accessible, available, and when people can't really come into the building and say, "Here, look at my device. How do I make this work?" That distance added a barrier that was a little more difficult. But in general, we didn't necessarily have an expert on one device or another device. Everybody pretty much knows how these things work, and we're already pretty used to having those conversations. But having them more virtually certainly was a change and a challenge.
So would you say that people feel a lot more comfortable now with that? So this is a plus.
Definitely.
That now everybody's got this new learning experience, or feel like they can ask the question. They always say there's no stupid questions, which there isn't. If you don't know the answer, you got to find out what it is. So you're transitioning to people feeling more comfortable virtually with that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of programs that go on that the library has dozens of programs every month.
Yeah.
And those continued.
Yeah. So, and this was another one of the major ways that we pivoted. And again, going back to the people for profession idea, we've always had a great reputation as having really good in-person programs that people can come to the library to learn about any number of things. Most people, I think, are familiar with the idea of story times. Kids come to the library, do a story and a craft and a song, and
Yes.
it's a great time. We do not the same thing for adults, but the adult version of that. Come to learn about electric cars or art or all kinds of
Take a
interesting
tour through
topics.
the city. And, yeah.
So again, early on in the pandemic, that was something that we recognized. Okay, we've got to figure out how to bring this to people when we're not allowed to bring people into a building together. So we pivoted pretty quickly and got set up a virtual programming environment where people could tune into our programs and view them on the computers, which hopefully is the next best thing or the best option at the time, anyway, of being able to participate in programs like that. And thankfully, we had tools like Zoom that really came along and made facilitating those kinds of activities pretty easy.
And do you find that people were like, okay, I can go into the library now for some programs that are going to be available at the library, but they prefer to stay home?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the takeaways from this whole pandemic, that some people love the ability to tune into programs virtually. And I feel strongly, and my staff feels strongly, that we need to not move away from that. So our strategy now, particularly on the adult side, is a hybrid programming model where people can both come into the library to watch a program and tune in virtually at the same time. I think particularly with some of our more elderly people who maybe have a harder time getting out of the house. In the winter months when it's slushy and icy and people have a hard time getting around town, being able to offer these things virtually allows us to reach a lot more people, a whole other segment of the community that wouldn't be able to see those programs in person. So yes, we need to get back to in-person programming. We have gotten back to in-person, but we really felt strongly that we needed to have this hybrid option available. And I think we've come up with a good solution to have that going forward, and I don't see that changing anytime. I think that's going to be with us for the long term, and I think it's a great solution. Like I said, I think it's a win-win for people who, love to kind of get out of the house and get over to the library and see things in person, but also for people who aren't able to do that.
Do you find that your stretch is a little bit farther with people outside maybe the regular city limits where they can connect to that virtual event and participate in that? Do you have that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With particularly in the middle of the pandemic, I think people caught on really fast that there are lots of libraries, lots of entities that are doing these really cool programs all over the country, maybe all over the world, and tuning in. And we would occasionally get emails from Nashville or Las Vegas or I loved your program on this, and
it's kind of fun.
It is. It's cool that we're able to reach that. Another cool thing that's come out of this are these virtual programming consortia that have developed, where multiple libraries will kind of pull their resources together to bring a bigger program than maybe an individual library by itself would be able to put on, with like a bigger name presenter. A couple weeks ago we had Jeff Tweedy and Ron Swanson. I'm blanking on the actor's name now, but they kind of co-presented a program, which is an amazing thing that most libraries would not be able to
afford it.
Exactly,
really.
to pay the price tag
Sure.
for names that big. But as we pulled together, 50 or 100 libraries can pitch in sort of the normal amount and make these amazing things happen. So that's another big takeaway, and that's something that's not going away anytime soon. There's now sort of a formal coalition of libraries that call themselves Illinois Libraries Present, and we're a very excited member of that group who have at least monthly, another performer, another big name in the library world anyway.
Yes. Would you say that's an outgrowth of that consortium? Because of the pandemic, you all were talking to each other saying, what can we do together to make it bigger and better?
Yeah, absolutely. I think once we realized, hey, we're getting people from, from Tinley and Orland and, Denver and everywhere else tuning into our programs, what's to stop us from all kind of pooling together? Why would we spend, a couple $100s on, this and somebody else is going to spend a couple $100s on the same person and the same program a week later or a month later, when we could all kind of just do it together and spread our resources that much further by cooperating that way. It just made sense. And again, I think it's something that will just continue to make sense going forward. To some extent, this is a model that we're, in Palos anyway, that we're a little bit used to, because we've had this Palos Reads event for a number of years where we and Palos Park and Green Hills over in Palos Hills, the Palos Fine Arts Group have sort of all worked together to bring this big event together. And it's been on hiatus because of the pandemic, but we were used to this idea of kind of cooperating and pooling our resources to put on a bigger program, but that was always in person. So this virtual, the other thing about the virtual programming is, the sky's the limit in terms of how many people can tune in.
Right.
With an in-person program, you can only host so many people. Our library has a max of 100 people in our biggest meeting room. For the Palos Reads event, we would maybe get a venue that could hold 200 or 300 people. We've had virtual events where we've had almost 1,000 people in the past year.
That's amazing, isn't it? Wow.
The Jeff Tweedy event had close to 5,000 people between all the libraries that participated.
Oh, wow.
For our Chris Boljalian event last year, we had almost 1,000 people, and we regularly get over the 100 capacity that we could have in person for various virtual events.
So that's another plus. I mean, if
Absolutely.
you try and find the good that came out of, the struggle to get through a pandemic, and there's several things that have happened.
And it's given us a whole new dimension to allow people to be connected with the library and with what we do that didn't exist before the pandemic.
Right. Okay, so now I want to know about hybrid. So hybrid means that you can come into the library and you can watch the program at the library, or is that person actually there at the library?
So there are two kinds of hybrid programs, and you just touched on both of them.
Okay.
One is we have a live performer at the library. You can come to the library and see them in person, but we're also recording and broadcasting that recording in real time online. So you can tune in to Zoom and see the library's meeting room, the person who's standing in the meeting room giving this presentation. The other type is a virtual presenter. You can come into the library and, in a group setting, watch the presentation happening on the big screen,
Nice.
But also you can tune in at home. And each of those two formats has different advantages and disadvantages. To some extent, again, going back to the Jeff Tweedy presentation, part of what made that work was that they didn't have to be here. They could be wherever in the world they were and still give this presentation, still participate in our library. So there's a lot of strength to this idea of a virtual presenter, that we can get presenters who maybe wouldn't be able to come to the library in person.
Especially maybe those bigger names, where they're not here, they're in Massachusetts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. On the other hand, we're well aware that people want to be out again. People want to be gathering together, and there's nothing that substitutes for a face-to-face conversation.
Right.
So those things need to be a permanent part of what we do as well. So we're trying to have our cake and eat it too, and I hope we're going to get to.
Well, I think what's interesting too is these things don't just happen. Like, you don't call up someone a month ahead of time. These things are booked far out. So not knowing a lot of where are we in this pandemic. And again, we have a little bit of a rise here again with things, but we're not as nervous this time. But because these have to be booked ahead of time, some of these things cannot be changed immediately.
Yeah, and that's been maybe one of the biggest headaches for us from a programming perspective, that we've booked these months in advance, and as we've been booking them, we've been saying, well, what do we think things are going to look like 6 months from now? And with many of these performers, these people that we have, that's just the way it has to be. You have to book them that far in advance.
do.
So you know, at different points, there have been at least 2 major points in the pandemic where we said, okay, I think at this point it's going to be good, and then it has, you know, fallen through with a major issue, a major flare-up of things that have made us reevaluate that. Now, thankfully, we're finally at the tail end of that, where you know, we're going to start seeing, on the adult side at least, some of those performers that we can transition to in-person presentations that we had booked as virtual, but some of them are just going to have to remain, you know, virtual, and that's why, again, I think the hybrid model is what we're going to have to rely on, where people can come into the library and again, be there with a staff member, be there in a group setting to view this and ask questions and participate.
And be with other people. I mean,
Right.
that's what people want to do. Okay, so we've started back to in-person for the kiddos, so
Yeah.
they can come in and have a story hour and so forth.
Yeah.
Which brings us then to the next thing I want to talk about, which is the big renovation at the library. And I mean, I don't know that everybody knows about this. It's really a huge deal.
Yeah.
And so the kids section, the youth and teen, is being renovated, and those kids are now down in the meeting room and you know, different places in the library, because that room is not available right now. But I'm really excited about it. It's just going to be tremendous, and I would love for you to tell our audience about what is going on up there.
So yeah, if you've been in the library in the past couple of months, you've seen the second floor is closed completely to the public. The whole second floor, which is our youth and teen area, is being renovated from top to bottom. We've moved walls, we've, you know, put in new flooring. The whole thing is going to look completely different when people get there, and I think people are going to be blown away. We're going to have you know, a new programming presentation space, a new teen area, a maker lab, which is going to have some awesome stuff in it, an interactive space that I think is going to just really enchant people, play areas, all the stuff that I think people, especially kids, you know, dream about, and it's going to hopefully capture kids' imaginations and really make them want to come to the library again and again and again for what's actually there in terms of the building, and also, you know, then take some books home, take some videos home, and have the library be, you know, a part of their lives in the long term.
Oh, I think it will be. Why don't you explain to our viewers a little, what would be a maker area? What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's I think of it sort of as crafting heaven.
They love that
yes.
too.
So, and not just for kids. I mean, this is going to be stuff that's available to all ages. But you know, everything from jewelry making equipment to sewing equipment to a 3D printer, laser engraving, laser cutting machine, and basically anything that you might want to be your craftiest person. And kids love crafts, teens love crafts, adults love crafts. The idea is that we're going to create really a hub, I think, that people in the community can come to and say, wow, that I can't get access to this in my home. It's a little bit, you know, beyond my resources, but the library can do that and can provide access to that for us. So
I think that people will be very excited, and it'll be so amazing to them that literally every part of the youth and teen services is changed. So, you know, what you thought was the section where kids went back, way in the back, where there was a glass wall and, you know, they did activities back there, that's not there. It's going to change. Just the whole layout has more function, I think, from what I can tell.
definitely.
You know, for the people that are working upstairs, taking care of the kids, watching over them, helping them, they have a better spot now. It's just everything has been shuffled around to somewhere new.
Yeah, and really that was probably the number one impetus of this project, was to make the space more functional from a variety of standpoints. I mean, from a sort of security and service standpoint, so that staff aren't over to the side and where they can't see what's going on. They're now going to be in the middle of everything and able to kind of see all the parts of the room. And you know, as you've seen, once you take the bookcases out, it's a gigantic space to try and keep an eye on.
Really incredibly big.
Yeah.
Just had no idea.
So having staff, kind of in the center of things and able to keep an eye on things, but also, we've got this beautiful giant window on the north side of the building. We wanted to make that a more used space. So we're moving kind of our program room over there, so people will be in there for story times and whatnot, but also making that a space that when it's not used for story times, we can really open it up and have it become part of the main floor of the library as well, and really maximize the usage of all of those spaces, and still, have a separate space for the teens kind of over on this side where they can feel like they've got some privacy and do their gaming or, whatever teens want to do over there.
And you brought up that window. I mean, that window, wait till you see it. It is so gorgeous. You see it from the outside of the building easily, but you really never noticed it from the inside of that room.
Yeah.
And it's spectacular. It's just the best thing.
So it's what used to be our teen area, and so it was used by teens. It wasn't so much used by the adults who might really, I think, appreciate that window, that space, that light.
Not sure
that
the teens
comfort.
are even looking at the window.
Right. I mean, I feel like the teens, they just as soon be over in a cave and, be happy doing their own thing over there. So again, I think in terms of really enhancing the use of the space, that was a priority, to make that room available to caregivers, to kids, have it be used a lot more than it was.
Yeah, exactly. And there's going to be some great spaces for the littler kids, and that they're going to have a great time in, and they're going to want to come back to the library over and over.
Yeah, there'll be, there are little play areas kind of throughout the department. I feel like around every corner there's going to be another little surprise for people.
Yes.
Everything from sort of an infant baby play corral, to a play diner for for a little bit older kids, like we said, the kind of the crafting and other activity areas. This light interactive room that I think is going to appeal to all ages,
even adults.
Yeah, I really think.
I think so too.
I think all ages are going to find something that they love in this space.
They absolutely are. When do we kind of think this project will be ready to get in there?
Yeah, I mean, it's another pandemic conversation. Supply chains. We've all heard about supply chains so much. It's a little hard to say. Okay. Our original target date was October 1st, and I am cautiously optimistic that that's going to happen, maybe even before then. But it's almost going to be sort of a we won't know that we're opening until we're just about to open.
Okay.
As these it's the furniture that's holding us up. As these big pieces of furniture do finally start to come in later on in the summer, then we'll say, okay, we've got it. We've got enough. We can start planning for our big grand opening. So I would say stay tuned.
Okay.
Around the end of the summer, I would expect to hear something.
We'll
be getting the word out,
good.
But it's hard to pinpoint a date right now, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, that's all right. At least we know it's coming. With the price and cost of everything, how does the library do that? How do they come up with the monies for this?
Yeah, a couple things. I mean, we've been really incredibly lucky the past couple of years to have a few major donors to the library, and that's really what's allowed this project to happen on the scale that it has. So Francine Zanardo passed away a few years ago and left the library almost $200,000 in her estate.
Amazing.
And then more recently, Harold and Muriel Osterberg passed away and left the library a similar amount, about $200,000. So between those two donations, fundraising by our Friends of the Library group, who raise more than $10,000 a year every single year.
Amazing too.
The Women's Club, Palos Women's Club, has made another sizable donation. So a lot of this project is being paid for by donations, as opposed to our other main way of paying for projects like this is our capital reserves plan. So we have, we sort of have a savings account, and we put away a little bit of money every year in that account, and kind of save up so that when we do have $1 million renovation project like this, we don't have to go to the taxpayers and say, hey, can we borrow this money? We want to be able to to pay it off in advance. And that's my goal for the way the library is going to operate in perpetuity. That we won't have to go to the taxpayers. We won't have to go in debt to make things like this happen. So we've done a lot of work kind of on the administrative side to make sure that this saving money, accruing money for these projects is something that happens regularly. But certainly with regard to the scale of this renovation project, it would not be what it's going to be without Mrs. Zanardo, without the Osterbergs, without these people who have done left these amazing gifts that are going to really, be with us.
It's really
for
incredible
years, for
that they did that. I mean, to get that kind of donations makes so many things possible, and it benefits the entire community.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something that, something that's going to be a legacy of theirs, for years. People will be, saying the name Zanardo and saying the name Osterberg years after they're gone, and staff will be able to talk about who these people were and, how they made this project happen.
Well, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled for the youth and teen, and actually the whole community when it comes to some of these things that, just head on upstairs. There's a staircase, there's an elevator, you can go up there eventually and participate in the maker section and the light area and just see what it's all about. And look at that gorgeous window out there. And maybe there'll be some programming up there too.
Absolutely.
You never know.
Yep.
Jesse, thank you so much for coming in today, and it's good to know all about the things that happen in the library and the struggles and the positives you've been through with the pandemic. I know it's been a thing
ride
for everybody. But we're so grateful to the library for everything that they have done and hung in there and been available to all of us, and the programming and the books and the cooperation for getting things brought out to us, and we all appreciate it. I know the whole viewing audience who really utilizes the library really appreciated it all the time, but particularly in those really difficult times during the pandemic. So thank you, Jesse, for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching us on Spotlight. I'm Sue Jankowski. You have a great day. Bye-bye.